You know, if you speak about reforming Social Security, I've noticed, and among my colleagues, that they get kind of an amused, patronizing look. Oh, you're going to do Social Security. And there's a kind of a, we're the wise person, and yes, you may have been around here for a while, but you're incredibly naive. And believe me, I have received that reaction from colleagues. Which is kind of why I think the American people have lost faith in Congress. Okay, Social Security, the unfunded accrued liability is 20% of our nation's future indebtedness. 20%, that one program alone. 10,000 boomers a day become eligible for social or Medicare, and that's a day. And when everybody says, oh my gosh, our debt and deficit is going up, as we all know in this room, the amount of discretionary spending has remained a constant as a percent of our budget. It is the entitlements that is exploding. And yet people think it's or think it's kind of naive to think that we should even contemplate doing something about it. OMG, I mean, where are we going as a country? I'm pleased to say, though, that we have an idea, we call it our big idea, that at the mid part of last Congress, we had 7 Democratic senators, we had 7 Republican senators who were willing to go out on the podium and say, we endorse this idea. We briefed the White House 4 separate occasions. That was the good news. The bad news is that Biden wasn't interested. But nonetheless, we're setting it back up so that next Congress, we hope we can achieve it. So let me kind of quickly go over it, and then I'll take whatever questions you have. First, again, to repeat, Social Security is going insolvent, 7 or 8 years. At that point, according to law, the amount of money going out has to decrease to the amount of going in. Now, people may be confused. Wait a second, if it's going insolvent, why would you have to decrease? Well, for just a quick primer, in those years in which we paid extra, we as a society, it went into a trust fund. And that trust fund supplements the amount of revenue coming from our payroll taxes, so that if the amount coming from payroll taxes is not sufficient to pay that promise to beneficiaries, the trust fund fills in the gap. The problem, in 7 or 8 years, that trust fund is kaput. When that happens, the amount that we're paying is less than the amount going out, and by law, it has to decrease here. The amount going out has to decrease. Now, no one thinks Congress is going to do that. Everyone thinks that Congress is going to step up and borrow the money and pay it. If we do that and include borrowing cost, our 75-year obligation to address that in nominal dollars is $615 trillion. $615 trillion. That's real money. $615 trillion. 20% of our nation's indebtedness over the next 75 years will be related to that. So, yes, it might be naive to take it on, but why in the heck are we otherwise here? But we have to think creatively. Americans, I mean, there's always a solution. Everybody says Social Security is easy to fix. You just eat your spinach. Well, you know, when I look around the United States, I don't see a whole lot of appetite for spinach. I just don't. People want something different. So we've tried to come up with a different idea, and we call it our big idea. And what we would do is set up an investment fund, separate from Social Security. Here's Social Security. We set up an investment fund. We put $1.5 trillion in it over 5 years, and it is invested in our nation's economy, just like the Canadians do. The Canadians have 10 separate funds in each province, and a teacher's fund, and this fund, and this fund. They put them in 20 years ago, something like that. And they've done fantastic. And they've taken pension funds that were in the red, and now they're firmly in the black. It's what the Norwegians do. It's what the Japanese do. It's what the Saudis do. It's what everybody does. You know, the birds do it, the bees do it, let's fall in love. It's what everyone does except for Social Security. So we would set up an investment fund, put $1.5 trillion, any proceeds over the next 60 to 75 years would flow back into it. It would be held in escrow. We would repeal the law saying that you must cut benefits but we would use this escrow to offset the borrowing required to pay those promised benefits. If you do this, that takes care of, using conservative estimates, that takes care of at least 70% of the long-term unfunded accrued liability. Along the way, we can actually increase benefits. Now, by the way, the reason we had 7 Republicans and 7 Democrats is that we figured out something that both Democrats would really like and Republicans liked too, and things that Republicans really liked and Democrats liked too, and we addressed those issues at the same time. For example, if you talk to someone who's 65 years old, retires, goes back to work, they're pulling their social, they go back to work as a nurse, they'll tell you, oh, I got a $1,000 cut in my Social Security payment. Now that's called the retirement earnings test. Now theoretically, that person gets the money back when they re-retire, and they'll get the money back. That is perceived as a tax, and someone will say, well, why do I go back to work? I'm gonna lose $1,000 on my social, I'd rather just go fishing with my kids. We repeal that. It is a work incentive, Republicans love it. Democrats like it too, Republicans love it. We put in there a proposal, and everybody's gonna know the person I'm describing. But it's basically a basic minimum benefit. And in this, my mother, we had a maid when I was growing up, and she would work 4 hours in the morning at one home, 4 hours down the street at the next home, and she would do that 5 days a week. And of the 10 people that employed her, my mother was the only one that paid Social Security on her. Now she wanted to be paid in cash, but my mother said, no, we're going to do it. But she was the only one. Now she qualified for Social Security. She paid her quarters, but it looks like she earned minimum wage 4 hours a week for 20 years, maybe 40 years. Her Social Security benefit will reflect that. We put in there a basic minimum benefit to elevate her, or him, to a level where she would have more money to live upon, even though she is seen by Social Security as a long-term low-wage worker. Democrats love that. Republicans like it too. Democrats really love it. And we have things on both sides that would get 7 Republicans and 7 Democrats willing to go public. Now, we've still got to fill in the gap, but there's dials we can turn, and believe me, Alex is here, and Joe's here, and my staff is young people are continuing to work upon this, to give an array of options to whoever the next president is, so that he or she could say, oh, I like this dial and I don't like that dial. Along the way, if we do this, we do address 20% of our nation's future indebtedness. This one program addresses that. We improve benefits. There's no spinach here. This is not quite dessert, but it certainly is close to a free lunch as you can possibly get in public policy. And we're teeing it up. We hope to introduce it the first week or two, the first month or two of the next Congress. We're under incredible pressure financially, and we are anticipating that we'll have strong support again.